The Hartford mansion once lay silent like a tomb, where a young man was bound by fear so deeply he dared not touch another's hand. But then, a humble nurse stepped in, bringing with her care and the light of human kindness. From the first trembling notes at the piano to the promise beneath the starry sky, they learned together how to face prejudice, defy doubt, and love with all their courage. This is not just a love story but a journey to reclaim human worth in a world filled with barriers. The night sky over Connecticut cast a grim veil upon the Whitmore estate. The mansion loomed across dozens of acres, its cold grey stone walls and towering glass windows reflecting the dim light within. Rain poured down in torrents, drumming relentlessly on the ancient tiled roof, while rolling thunder deepened the tension in the air. Inside a dark panelled study, its walls hung with ancestral portraits and still carrying the faint scent of whiskey, Charles Whitmore sat motionless behind a walnut desk, his hand pressed against his forehead, fingers trembling as they tried to hide the bloodshot eyes worn thin by sleepless nights and mounting pressure. Margaret Whitmore, his wife, stood at the wide window, gazing out into the flooded garden. Her dark blue silk dress clung to her shoulders, trembling from the chill and years of pent-up strain. "We cannot let this go on, Charles," she said, her voice breaking half plea, half reproach. "Our son is 28 years old. 28, and he has never once held a woman's hand without collapsing." Charles turned, his gaze aging 10 years in a single instant. "You think I don't know? I saw him have a panic attack, collapsing in the living room, just because a nurse walked in. I saw him shrink back, crying like a child, when forced to greet the Harrington girl at the gala. I have seen it all, Margaret, and I am powerless." Silence swallowed the room, broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock, each strike a cruel reminder that time moved on, while Ethan's life remained chained in darkness. Margaret gripped her dress tightly, fingernails digging into the fabric. "What have we done, Charles? We've turned our son into a prisoner inside his own home. Do you remember the day he was born, when you swore to protect him from all harm? That protection has become his shackles. No friends, no love, no future." Charles rose and poured another glass of whiskey, his trembling hand spilling drops across the desk. He drank it down in one swallow, his voice hoarse. "It started when he was just a boy. After his sister's death, we were so afraid that we built walls around him. Only male tutors, only male staff, shielding him from anything that might cause pain. I thought I was saving him, but I destroyed him." Margaret turned, eyes glistening yet resolute. "We cannot sit here and watch him wither away. Charles, listen to me. I found someone, a nurse, Naomi Carter. She's young, compassionate, and has worked with patients who suffer from social disorders." Charles narrowed his eyes, suspicion flickering. "You want to bring some stranger here and tell Ethan she's a miracle cure?" "No." Margaret shook her head, voice urgent. "We'll tell him he's had a small accident and needs a nurse to stay during his recovery. That way, Naomi's presence will feel natural, not forced. Maybe, just maybe, he'll learn that women are not a threat, that touch doesn't mean panic." Charles slammed his glass down, the sharp crack echoing. "That's deception, Margaret. Another wall of lies around him." "Lies for what?" she pleaded, stepping closer, her voice choked. "To save what remains of our son's life. Do you want to watch him grow old in this house, wasting away in loneliness?" Charles said nothing for a long while. The pounding rain outside seemed to strike directly against his chest. At last, he glanced at the family portrait hanging above his desk, the proud Whitmore men, none of whom had failed to pass down name and power. "Fine," he muttered. "We'll do it your way. But if this fails, we may lose Ethan forever." Meanwhile, in a small apartment in New Haven, Naomi Carter packed her nursing kit into a worn leather bag. The clock struck 10, yet her heart remained restless. That afternoon's phone call echoed still in her ears. "My family needs you. My son needs you." Naomi was used to wealthy patience, but something in Margaret's voice unsettled her, not command, money, fear, and desperate hope woven into every word. Her eyes fell on a photo of her late mother on the desk white coat, kind smile. She had died of heart disease when Naomi was 20, leaving her with the determination to carry on the work of caring for others. "Mom," Naomi whispered, "if I can help someone find faith in life again, maybe you'd be proud." The rain poured as Naomi's car pulled up to the Whitmore estate. The 10-foot iron gate creaked open slowly, revealing a world of wealth and power, but cold, almost forbidding. Under the porch roof, Sam Brooks, the longtime butler, waited with an umbrella. His gentle eyes softened Naomi's unease. "Miss Carter, I presume. Welcome. The Whitmores have been expecting you." Walking through the long corridor with oil paintings, Naomi felt like she'd entered a museum. The marble floors reflected dim golden lights, but gave no warmth. Each portrait seemed to follow her with stern eyes, interrogating the outsider. Sam spoke softly. "Master Ethan is in the library. He is unusual, but believe me, his heart is the kindest I've ever known." Naomi nodded, gripping the strap of her bag. The towering oak doors swung open, revealing a room scented with old books and warmed by a crackling fire. A tall, slender young man stood by the telescope, dark brown hair falling across a face etched with tension. At the sound of the door, he flinched and turned. His green eyes met Naomi's, and instantly his breath quickened, chest heaving as though he'd been fleeing. "Hello, Ethan," Naomi said gently, staying near the door so as not to frighten him further. "I'm Naomi Carter. I'll be looking after you for a while." He stammered, voice barely a whisper. Why are you here?" Naomi smiled, careful not to stare. "I heard you love astronomy. Your telescope is beautiful. Are you observing a planet tonight?" A flicker of confusion. Then his gaze softened. "Jupiter," he murmured. "It's still visible, even with the clouds." "Jupiter? I've never looked through a telescope before. Maybe one day you'll show me?" Ethan blinked, hands still trembling, but his breathing slowed. Suddenly, he blurted out, You're beautiful." His face flushed crimson, head bowed low, shame etched across him. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that." Naomi let out a soft laugh, not mocking, but warm. "Thank you, Ethan. That's very kind." From the doorway, Sam smiled quietly. In the firelight, he witnessed something fragile yet precious. For the first time in years, Ethan had not run away. Naomi sat near the window, leaving space so Ethan would not feel pressured. She didn't open her nursing bag, but kept it resting lightly on her lap, a gesture of non-threat. Outside, rain hammered the earth, thunder rumbling across the grounds, yet inside, only Ethan's slowing breath and Naomi's calm patience filled the library. He still stood by the telescope, fingers clasped tightly as though the slightest touch might shatter his fragile courage. Naomi let him find his rhythm, not rushing with empty words of comfort. She knew, with anxiety, every push made the walls higher. "When did you fall in love with the stars?" she asked at last, voice low and steady. Ethan looked up, surprised by the simplicity of the question. "Since I was little, I wasn't allowed outside much. But Father bought me a telescope. I thought, if I couldn't step into the world, I could look into the universe." Naomi felt a pang in her chest. A boy locked away in his own home, finding solace in distant stars, beautiful and heartbreaking. "Do you have a favorite astronomy book?" she asked, gently offering him a path forward. His green eyes lit faintly. He pointed to the shelf. "Carl Sagan's Cosmos. I've read it dozens of times. He makes the universe feel close, not frightening, like family." Naomi nodded. "I haven't read it, but if you don't mind, maybe you could read me a passage. I'd love to hear it in your voice." His lips parted, disbelief flickering. No one had ever asked to hear him before. Slowly, cautiously, he reached for the worn book, flipping pages. His voice trembled at first, then steadied. "We are made of star stuff. We are a way for the cosmos to know itself." Naomi listened, her heart silenced by the fragile beauty of the moment. This man, imprisoned by cold walls, carried within him reverence for the infinite sky, a tender and tragic contradiction. Sam quietly closed the door, leaving them alone. He knew that healing sometimes began not with counsel, but with two souls truly seeing each other. Upstairs, Margaret leaned against the banister, straining to catch faint echoes from the library. Charles joined her, his face unreadable. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. "He's talking to her. Not screaming, not collapsing, for the first time in years." Charles folded his arms, hiding his emotion. "Don't celebrate yet, Margaret. This is only the first few minutes. Miss Carter could leave the moment she sees the true difficulty. Who would stay with a young man who cannot endure the presence of women?" "She won't leave," Margaret said firmly. "I saw it in her eyes, Charles. She isn't like the others. She has patience, compassion." Charles looked at her with weary resignation. "I fear we're clinging to yet another illusion. But if this can save Ethan, I'll let you lead." That night, Naomi was shown to the East Wing guest room, spacious, with a large bed draped in white linen, windows overlooking rain-drenched roses. Yet the luxury meant nothing to her. She sat at the edge of the bed, thinking of Ethan's eyes when he read, anxious, fragile, yet glowing with the innocence of a child trusted for the first time. Naomi knew she had stepped into an unusual world, but deep inside, she felt this might be her chance to help someone reclaim themselves, and perhaps to rediscover the meaning her profession had lost in cold cases and wealthy employers who saw her as little more than hired service. She whispered into the dark, "Tomorrow, I'll begin again with him. Not as a patient, but as a friend." The weak sun broke through after the storm at dawn, casting gold against the ancient stone walls. Ethan had risen early, unable to sleep. Naomi's voice lingered in his thoughts. "Maybe you could read me a passage." No one had ever spoken to him with such patient gentleness. No one had ever truly wanted to hear him. He opened his bedside notebook and scrawled clumsy words. Day 1. She didn't run away. She smiled. "Maybe I'm not as frightening as I think." Sam was preparing breakfast downstairs in the kitchen when Ethan entered a rare sight, as he usually ate in his room. Ethan glanced around nervously, then muttered, "Naomi? Maybe she'll join us." Sam smiled warmly. "If you'd like, I'll invite her." Ethan no longer seemed the isolated man for a fleeting moment, but a boy awaiting his very first friend. Naomi arrived in simple clothes, hair neatly tied back. When her eyes met Ethan's, she smiled softly. He looked down at once, but then, gathering courage, whispered, "Good morning." "Good morning, Ethan," Naomi replied, her voice light as the morning Sunday. "Did you watch the stars last night?" He nodded faintly. "Yes, Jupiter. But I think I'll show you another night, when the sky is clearer." Naomi sat down at the table, glanced at her toast, then back at him. "I'm looking forward to it." A brief silence followed, but it no longer weighed heavily. And in the faint gleam in Ethan's eyes, Sam knew. A door had opened. Small, but immeasurably important. The rain lasted through the morning, shrouding the Whitmore mansion in more profound stillness. Droplets trailed down the window panes, catching what little light broke through the grey sky. Naomi Carter walked the marble corridor, her footsteps echoing in the hollow space. She drew a deep breath, reminding herself to stay calm. Today would be the day she truly began reaching Ethan. Beside her, Sam Brooks carried a silver tray of tea. He cast her a knowing glance, as if reading the unease in her eyes. "Don't rush. Master Ethan is very sensitive. What matters most is showing him you're not here to force anything." Naomi nodded. She had cared for many complex patients before, but none had left her feeling tense and compassionate. She remembered his trembling form by the telescope last night, struggling but still managing to read aloud. That fragile effort urged her on. She wanted to try again, to see him conquer even the smallest piece of his fear. As they neared the library, Sam paused. "I'll bring the tea in first. Wait a few minutes. Sudden changes make him panic. But believe me, he asked about you today." Naomi blinked in surprise. "He asked what?" Sam's kind smile deepened. "Only if you'd be at breakfast. For him, that's a great step forward." Hope stirred faintly in Naomi's chest. Ethan sat hunched by the window in the library, clutching a small notebook. He scribbled a few crooked words, then scratched them out. The phrases tangled in his mind, colliding. What do I say to her? What if I shake? What if I scare her? The door creaked softly. Sam entered, placing the tray on the table. Good morning, Master Ethan. I brought tea and biscuits. Miss Carter is outside. Would you like to see her? Ethan's head lifted, green eyes flickering with fear and anticipation. She's still here. She's still here, Sam assured him. She hasn't left. Ethan swallowed hard, then nodded faintly. All right, let her in. Sam smiled gently and opened the door. Naomi stood tall, though her palms were slick with sweat. When her eyes met Ethan's, he flinched but did not turn away. His fingers clutched the desk edge, his breath drawn deep. Good morning, Ethan, Naomi said softly. I hope you managed to sleep last night. Ethan lowered his gaze and murmured, I read more. About the planets. Naomi's smile warmed. Would you tell me? I want to learn from you. His hands tightened, but a flicker of pride crossed his face. He nodded slightly, rising to move toward the telescope. Naomi stayed seated, not closing the distance. When the sky is clear, which planet do you watch the most? Saturn, he whispered, eyes fixed on the lens. Its rings, they're the most beautiful, but Jupiter is easier to see. I like to think about its moons, like friends who never leave. Naomi stilled at the quiet metaphor. In those words, she saw his longing for connection, for companionship. If I may, I'd love to see Saturn's rings through your telescope one day. I've never seen them with my own eyes. Ethan turned, astonishment breaking across his features. You really want to? Of course, Naomi replied gently. Think of me as your companion, at least for the week I'm here. The room seemed to pause. Ethan did not retreat. Instead, his shoulders eased slightly, and his eyes blinked rapidly, glimmering like a child receiving an unexpected gift. Naomi shifted the conversation, sharing light stories to soften the mood. Nights at the hospital, the children she'd cared for, even the exhausting flu season that had kept her on back-to-back shifts. Ethan listened closely, nodding now and then. He spoke little, but his gaze seemed to plead for more whenever Naomi paused. When Sam returned with fresh biscuits, he was startled to find Ethan sitting across from Naomi, not so far away. His face flushed, yes, but there was no collapse, no trembling on the edge of panic. Naomi met Sam's eyes with a quiet smile, as if to say, we're on the right path. By noon, Margaret descended the stairs, intending to check the library. She froze at the doorway, Ethan listening intently, lips moving as if to ask a question. Tears slid down her cheek. How long had it been since she'd seen her son converse with a woman without breaking down? Charles approached, resting a hand on her shoulder. Don't hope too soon, he murmured. Yet even his eyes betrayed the stirrings of doubt and fragile hope. Toward evening, the rain lingered. Naomi asked to step into the garden for some air. Unexpectedly, Ethan rose and murmured, I'll come too, but only nearby. Sam was momentarily stunned. Ethan, who rarely left the library when women were around volunteering to go outside. Under the veranda, the rain softened into mist. Naomi strolled along the gravel path, hearing Ethan's steps behind her. He didn't come close, but he followed just a few paces back. For him, it was a journey of miles. Before the rain-soaked roses, Naomi turned with a warm smile. Thank you for coming with me. I know this isn't easy. Ethan lifted his eyes, rain glistening in them. He said nothing, only nodded. Yet Naomi saw it clearly. He was beginning to trust. The drizzle thinned to scattered drops on the drenched petals. Naomi breathed deeply, cool, damp air filling her chest. Behind her, Ethan stood rigid, shoulders taut as though bracing against an invisible storm. Do you often come outside like this? She asked, voice gentle as a breeze. He shook his head. No, very rarely. I stay in the library or the observatory. Outside, too many things I can't predict. Naomi turned, her eyes kind. But today, you did it. You're here, even for a few minutes. You stepped out. Ethan dropped his gaze, but the corners of his mouth trembled as if hiding a smile. His green eyes sparked faintly the rare glow of pride. They stood in silence, listening to the wind through the wet leaves. Naomi recalled her mother's words. Sometimes healing doesn't come from great strides, but from simply standing beside someone, letting them know they're not alone. "Would you like to try something small?" Naomi asked softly. Fear flickered instantly in Ethan's posture. "What? What is it?" Naomi did not move closer. She raised her hand, palm open toward him. "No need to hold it. Just bring your hand near mine. You don't have to touch me, unless you want to. Just know the distance can close whenever you're ready." Ethan stared at the hand, throat dry. Memories rushed back, shouts of doctors, panic attacks that had left him crumpled on the floor. But Naomi's face held no pressure, only endless patience. Slowly, he lifted his trembling hand. Inch by inch, he brought it closer until only a few centimeters remained. His breath grew ragged, chest tight. Naomi smiled. "That's enough, Ethan. You don't need more. This is perfect." He pulled back suddenly, clutching his chest as if after a long trek. Yet his eyes shone not with terror, but with the triumph of a small victory. They returned inside as the rain cleared. In the library, Sam waited with towels and hot tea. Handing one to Ethan, he whispered, "You did very well, sir." Ethan blushed, saying nothing, but clutched the towel tightly as though holding proof of his accomplishment. Naomi settled into an armchair, sipping tea. "Do you like reading late into the night?" she asked, gently steering the talk toward safer ground. Ethan nodded. "Sometimes. I read so I don't feel lonely. In books, people talk to each other and find a way to do it. But I—" He faltered, lips pressing tight. "You don't have anyone to talk with," Naomi finished softly, voicing what he could not. He nodded slowly, then whispered, "Before, I thought Sam was here only because of work, and now, I don't know if you're here for something else. But I want to believe it's not just money." Naomi stiffened, heart aching, because the truth was, part of her presence was for money. The Whitmore's offer had been too great to refuse. Yet looking into his unguarded eyes, she couldn't return cruelty with honesty. "I'm here because I want to help you," she said firmly, voice steady, "because I believe you deserve a friend." Ethan froze, eyes shimmering. He turned his notebook over, then quickly scribbled a word. Naomi glimpsed it. "Friend? Truly?" "Truly," she smiled. "If you agree, we can begin from there." He closed the notebook and held it to his chest like treasure. Then, cautiously but deeply moved, he nodded. That evening, Naomi returned to her room. On the bedside table lay a folded note, written in shaky but careful hand. "Thank you for not running away. E." Naomi's fingers trembled as she touched the words. She knew this was more than gratitude, a silent plea, a fragile spark after years of darkness. She sank onto the bed, a new fear rising. What if I can't stay? What if I only open the door, then leave him broken again? The thought kept her restless late into the night. Yet beneath the worry, one truth stood firm. She would not abandon him now. In the west wing, Ethan lay awake, eyes open in the dark. His heart still beat fast, but not from fear. Naomi's words echoed, "We can begin from there." He whispered silently. He set his notebook by the pillow. "Friend," and he drifted into peaceful sleep for the first time in many years. The first morning, Naomi truly settled into the Whitmore mansion's rhythm. It began with a piano echoing through the corridors. The music rose and fell, slow and heavy like raindrops left from the night before, swelling with intensity before dissolving into a long, aching note that lingered in the air. Naomi, fastening her white blouse, froze mid-button, her hands stiff. She followed the sound to the grand Whitmore conservatory. Tall glass windows flooded the room with pale morning light, falling across the ivory grand piano at its center. Ethan sat at the keys, shoulders slightly hunched, fingers tense but precise. He didn't glance at any sheet music he was playing from memory. Naomi stood in the doorway, struck still. In that moment, Ethan looked nothing like the timid recluse she had met. He was an artist, speaking in the one language where he seemed entirely home music. When the melody ended, Ethan noticed her. He startled, pulling his hands from the keys as though caught doing something wrong. "Sorry," he stammered. I didn't mean to make noise. I'll stop." "Don't." Naomi stepped forward, her voice firm. "That was the most beautiful piece I've ever heard. Did you compose it? He hesitated, cheeks flushing. Just some notes I made up. When I felt too lonely. Naomi smiled, sitting on a nearby chair to give him space. Your music isn't just beautiful. It tells the story you haven't yet spoken, and I heard it. Ethan lowered his head, hands tight, lips moving faintly. Then he whispered, Do you ever feel lonely? The question caught her off guard. She hadn't expected him to ask about her. But in his eyes, she saw no idle curiosity, only a deep yearning, the need to know he wasn't alone in his isolation. Yes, Naomi admitted slowly. I care for many people. By day I talk, comfort, and encourage. But when I go home, it's just four walls and silence. Sometimes I wonder, if I disappeared, would anyone notice? Ethan lifted his gaze, eyes fixed on her. He swallowed hard, then whispered, I know that feeling, like the world is living, and you're only existing. Silence fell, heavy, yet not uncomfortable, as if they had touched the exact hidden string connecting two souls who thought no one could understand them. Naomi broke it gently. Will you play something happier for me? A piece you think could make someone smile. Ethan hesitated, then set his hands on the keys again. This time, the melody was lighter, playful, like a bird's dance. He hummed a few clumsy, childlike lyrics about a butterfly, unable to choose which flower to land on. Naomi laughed, the sound bright and unguarded. Ethan faltered initially, then kept going, his eyes glowing with rare joy. When he finished, Naomi clapped softly. Do you know you're funny? I think you could make anyone laugh. His face reddened, shaking his head quickly. I've never sung for anyone but Sam. He probably just tolerated it. No, Naomi said firmly. He cherished it, and so did I. You have real talent, Ethan. Truly. Ethan froze. He had been praised for intelligence and academic brilliance, but never had anyone called him talented in this way, with warmth that came from the heart. That morning, Ethan joined Naomi in the grand dining room for the first time. Sam set out fruit, pastries, and tea. Ethan sat stiffly, hands folded neatly on the table like a schoolboy. Naomi prompted conversation, asking about books. Soon, Ethan animatedly described his love for science fiction novels and his dream of seeing the aurora borealis. His face lit with enthusiasm, and Naomi listened intently, nodding, smiling. Then his spoon slipped, spilling orange juice across the tablecloth. He froze, color draining from his face. I'm sorry. I ruined it. Naomi didn't rush to clean. Instead, she placed her hand gently over his. It's only orange juice, Ethan. No one sees that as a ruin. Honestly, I think it's sweet, because it means you wanted this breakfast to be perfect for me. Ethan stared at her hand on his, breath quickening, but no panic came. Instead, his eyes shimmered in disbelief. A touch could feel warm, not terrifying. Naomi gave a light squeeze, then let go, carrying on with breakfast as if nothing had happened. But inside, she felt certainty. Ethan was changing, little by little. And somehow, she was becoming the bridge for that change. By afternoon, the Connecticut sky cleared. Sunlight filtered through heavy clouds, spilling gold across the southern gardens. Naomi suggested gently, the weather's fine now. Shall we take a walk? Just around the garden, not far. Ethan flinched, glancing at the wide-open outdoors. Light, open space, the unpredictability of nature all daunting. I don't know if I can. Naomi's smile was calm, reassuring. That's all right. We'll go slowly. If it's too much, we'll turn back right away. Just try a little, you might like it. He was silent for a long time, then gave a tiny nod. All right, but only if you come with me. Of course, Naomi replied. They stepped into the rain-washed garden. Gravel paths shimmered with puddles, reflecting the pale blue sky breaking through. Ethan walked beside Naomi, keeping a safe distance, hands shoved deep in his sweater pockets. Each step was taut with tension, but Naomi didn't press him. She spoke gently, filling the silence. Do you ever read about trees, not just stars? She asked, pointing to a maple glistening with water. Ethan nodded faintly. Yes, I like Japanese maples. The Japanese have a word, momijigari, hunting autumn leaves. People see the red leaves, like a festival. I used to dream of joining once, but his voice trailed off, sadness in his eyes. Naomi looked up at the trembling leaves, then back at him. Who knows? Maybe one day you will, and when you do, I want to be the one to take your first photo under those red trees. Ethan stopped, eyes wide. Her words painted an image he'd never dared imagine. Himself, outside, among blazing red leaves, not alone. A spark of hope flickered within. They paused beneath an ancient oak, its roots twisting like coiled snakes. A worn wooden bench sat in its shade, bearing the weight of Whitmore generations. Ethan sat, and Naomi joined, leaving space between. I often come here to think, he murmured. From this bench, you can see the winding road out. I often wanted to try walking it, but I stopped, afraid I wouldn't return. Naomi met his eyes, steady and serious. You don't have to go far right away. But today, you came out of the library. You're sitting here with me under this tree. That's already a big step, Ethan. His green eyes shimmered, searching her face. You really think so? I don't just think, Naomi said firmly. I believe. Warm silence stretched between them. The wind stirred the leaves, sunlight filtering through branches, gilding Ethan's brown hair. He turned away, but the faintest smile tugged his lips. On the way back, he suddenly paused. Awkwardly, he bent and plucked a sprig of wildflowers, tiny purple blossoms bent from his clumsy grip. He held them out, face flushed. For you, he muttered so low she had to lean to hear. I didn't know what else to give. Naomi accepted, her chest tightening. Those awkward little flowers were more beautiful than any bouquet she had ever received. Thank you, Ethan. This is the best gift I've ever had. He ducked his head, a shy smile trembling at the corners of his mouth. Naomi was reading in the guest salon that evening when a gentle knock came. Opening the door, she found Ethan clutching his familiar notebook. Sorry, am I disturbing you? He asked. Not at all, she said, inviting him in. He sat in the farthest chair, opened the notebook, and slid it across to her. On the page, in shaky letters, today I went outside. For the first time, I felt the wind after the rain. You were there. Thank you. Naomi looked at him, her eyes damp. You don't need to thank me, Ethan. I should thank you for trusting me. Ethan shook his head, a rare seriousness in his gaze. I don't know if I can trust anyone else, but I want to trust you. Naomi understood in the soft lamplight that a bond had tightened today, no longer just tentative curiosity, but fragile, growing trust. And with that trust, their true journey was only beginning. Autumn sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the grand dining hall, spilling across the long white linen table. Sam Brooks had laid out the morning meal: crisp toast, butter, strawberry jam, fresh orange juice, and steaming coffee. The Whitmore mansion rarely felt this warm, this alive. Naomi Carter chose a seat near the head of the table, far enough not to overwhelm Ethan, who sat slightly across from her. He wore a grey sweater, hair falling over his brow, face taut, yet unable to stop himself from stealing glances at her. Pouring orange juice into glasses, Sam said with a smile, Master Ethan, it's a fine day. Perhaps after breakfast, you and Miss Carter could walk in the garden. The air is very fresh. Ethan gave a faint nod, but no words. Naomi began speaking, sharing a short story from the hospital, a young heart patient's resilience after surgery. Her tone was gentle, measured to draw him in. Ethan listened, tapping his fingers lightly on the table to steady his nerves. When she paused to take a bite of toast, Ethan suddenly spoke, haltingly. Do you ever feel like you have to be strong, because no one else will be strong for you? Naomi looked up, surprised. In his green eyes, there was no disguise, only raw truth. She nodded slowly. Yes, many times. But I've learned. Sometimes I'm allowed to be weak, too. What matters is having someone beside you, so you don't feel alone. Ethan lowered his head, whispering, I've never had anyone like that. At that moment, his glass tipped, orange liquid spilling across the cloth. He froze, face pale. Leaping up, He stammered, "I'm sorry, I ruined everything." Naomi rose immediately, circling the table. She didn't grab a cloth, didn't call for Sam. Instead, she laid her hand gently over his trembling one. "Ethan," she said softly, voice steady, "it's only juice. Nothing's ruined. There's nothing to fear." He stilled, eyes widening. His quick, shallow breaths slowed. Under her touch, his shaking eased. That ordinary contact, so simple, so human, was nothing less than a miracle to Ethan. You're touching me," he whispered, voice breaking. Naomi gave his hand a slight squeeze, her gaze warm. "Yes, and nothing happened except I wanted you to know you're not alone." His eyes glistened, as if on the verge of tears. For the first time as an adult, he felt a woman's touch without collapsing, not terror warmth, spreading through him like light. From a distance, Sam busied himself, pretending not to notice. But his old eyes shone. After years of watching Ethan drown in invisible fear, now by a single touch he seemed partly freed. Naomi released him gently and wiped the spill. "See? Everything's fine. Let's finish breakfast." Ethan sat stunned, fingers brushing where her hand had been, as if to hold on to the sensation. He nodded faintly, lips trembling not from fear this time, but from a fragile joy he had never known. The meal went on more easily. Naomi shared small anecdotes. Ethan nodded, murmured a few words. Little, but it was a long stride forward. As they left the dining hall, Naomi glanced at him. "We could sit in the library this afternoon if you'd like. You could show me your favorite books." He hesitated, then nodded. "All right." Naomi smiled. "Perfect. I'm looking forward to it." Ethan watched her walk away, heart racing. His hand still tingled with the warmth of hers. For the first time, a thought flickered. Maybe. I'm not entirely broken. That afternoon, pale gold light filled the library, streaming across dark wooden shelves. Naomi entered with a cup of mint tea. Ethan was sitting by the window with a thick book on his lap. "What are you reading?" Naomi asked gently, her voice like a knock on the door of his guarded world. He looked up, startled, then turned the cover toward her. "Cosmos, by Carl Sagan. I've read it dozens of times." Naomi smiled, settling opposite him. "Would you read me your favorite passage?" He hesitated, then opened to a page marked with an old slip of paper. His voice trembled at first, then steadied as he read aloud words about the vastness of the cosmos and humankind's smallness and yet preciousness. Naomi closed her eyes, listening. His voice was shy but sincere, filling the quiet room. When he stopped, she opened her eyes and smiled. "When you read, it feels like the whole universe is gathered in this room." His cheeks flushed, head bowed. I've never read aloud to anyone but Sam." "Then I'm fortunate," Naomi said warmly. After a pause, she rose and moved to the shelves, fingers brushing over the spines. "Do you have a book you'd recommend?" Ethan stood too, carefully approaching. Only half a meter separated them. He reached for a worn novel and held it out. Their fingertips brushed. Ethan recoiled instantly, as if shocked. But instead of collapsing, he only breathed hard, gripping the shelf. Naomi tilted her head, voice gentle. "It's all right, Ethan. Just a tiny touch." And I didn't find it frightening at all. His green eyes lifted, uncertain. You don't find it disgusting?" Naomi frowned softly. "Why would I? It was just your hand, and to me, it felt warm." He swallowed, shoulders easing slightly. In his eyes, a spark of new hope flickered. They sat side by side on the window bench, opening the novel together. Naomi suggested, "You read a page, then I'll read one. Let's share it." He agreed. When Naomi read, he listened, entranced. Her voice carried a calm rhythm, bringing life into the words. He found himself smiling when she playfully emphasized a witty line. When his turn came, his voice still shook, but each time Naomi nodded in encouragement, he grew steadier. Page by page, the room seemed to shrink until it contained only the two, bound by something genuine and straightforward. By evening, Sam brought fresh tea. He stopped short at the sight. Ethan and Naomi closer than ever, shoulders nearly touching, laughing softly over a passage. Ethan, who once fled from all contact, now sat glowing with quiet joy. Placing the tray down, Sam turned away, hiding his smile. What was unfolding went beyond his employer's hopes. This wasn't just therapy, it was the seed of something real. As Naomi prepared to leave the library, Ethan called out softly, "Naomi." She turned. He stood, clutching his notebook, eyes trembling but resolute. Stepping forward, he held it out. On the open page, scrawled words read, "Thank you for touching me and not leaving." Naomi accepted it, eyes damp. She looked up, her voice a whisper. "I won't leave, Ethan. Not because of a touch. Not ever." He swallowed, nodding. At that moment, for the first time in years, Ethan believed there could be someone who truly meant to stay. Night fell, and the Whitmore mansion sank into the stillness typical of the Connecticut suburbs. Outside the window, the shadow of the ancient oak stretched long beneath the moonlight. Naomi lay restless on the wide guest bed, unable to sleep. The faint whistle of wind slipped through the cracks, blending with the ticking of the old hallway clock. Everything carried the weight of history, as though the past were quietly watching the present. Naomi closed her eyes, but the morning's image returned with piercing clarity. Ethan's trembling hand beneath hers, his startled gaze when he realized the world did not collapse at a single touch. Her chest tightened. For the first time in years as a nurse, Naomi felt she wasn't just caring for a patient, but witnessing the slow opening of a soul. Then came a faint sound in the corridor, hesitant footsteps, as though someone lingered in doubt outside her door. Naomi sat up, listening. The steps stopped right in front, then silence. "Ethan?" Naomi called softly. A long pause, then his quivering voice. I'm sorry. I didn't want to bother you. I can't sleep." Naomi rose and opened the door. Ethan stood there, head bowed, clutching his small notebook. Moonlight fell over his pale face, making him look fragile and lost. "It's all right," Naomi said gently. "Would you like to come in for a while?" He hesitated, then nodded. The lamp's golden glow filled the room. Naomi sat in the armchair by the window, gesturing for Ethan to take the opposite. He held his notebook tightly, fingers fidgeting with the pencil tucked inside. "What's keeping you awake?" Naomi asked. Ethan hesitated, then opened his notebook. Slowly, he wrote a few lines and pushed them toward her. "I'm afraid that everything will disappear when I close my eyes, that you'll disappear, that tomorrow I'll be alone again." Naomi read, her heart constricting. She lifted her gaze to his, the eyes of a child abandoned in a house full of wealth but void of comfort. "Ethan," she whispered, "I won't disappear. I'm here, right now, and tomorrow morning, I'll still be here." He stared at her, as if searching for a lie. Then, for the first time, he spoke instead of writing. You really won't leave me?" Naomi smiled, her voice certain. "No, I won't leave." Silence fell, deep but steady. Ethan sat straighter, hands clasped tight, but his breathing slowed. Then, as though startled by his own courage, he murmured, "Naomi, could he, maybe, sit closer?" Naomi nodded. "Of course." He moved his chair nearer, just one arm's length away. For him, it was a chasm crossed. "Thank you," he whispered. "I just need to know. If I fall asleep, you'll still be there." Naomi's eyes softened. "You can sleep here if you like. I'll read and still be right here when you wake." Ethan's eyes glistened. He nodded, leaning back, notebook clutched to his chest. Naomi opened a novel, letting the lamplight spill over the pages. Within minutes, his breathing grew steady. His tense face relaxed, gentler now. Naomi watched him, a strange mix stirring inside her duty, tenderness, and a vow she hadn't spoken aloud, but could no longer deny. Outside, the moon cast silver across the gardens. In the small room, beneath the soft rustle of turning pages, a wounded soul finally found peace in the dark through a simple whisper, "I won't leave." Naomi didn't read much that night. Her eyes drifted again and again to Ethan's sleeping face under the warm glow. His lips moved faintly in dreams. But unlike the nightmares Sam had told her of, tonight he slept calmly. She rose quietly and draped a light blanket over him. When her hand brushed his shoulder, Ethan stirred. His fingers caught her sleeve in his sleep like a child afraid of the dark. Naomi froze, heart tightening. She laid her hand gently on his, whispering, "Sleep. I'm here." The words worked like a charm. His grip eased, but he still held her sleeve close. Naomi sat back, letting him rest in peace. At dawn, pink light seeped into the room. Ethan's eyes blinked open, disbelieving. Naomi was still there, slumped on her arm, asleep in the chair. He sat quietly, watching her, chest swelling with something unfamiliar: gratitude, wonder, and a sweetness so sharp it ached. He whispered, "You really stayed." Naomi stirred, lifting her head quickly. "Sorry, I must have dozed off. Did you sleep well?" Ethan nodded, eyes shining. "Yes. For the first time, in years, I didn't dream of nightmares." Naomi smiled, brushing her hair back. "Then I think I was right to stay awake with you." He hesitated, then spoke so softly it was almost lost. "Thank you. Without you, I think I'd always be afraid of the dark." That day, the mansion seemed brighter. Instead of shutting himself away in the library, Ethan invited Naomi to walk the long corridors lined with paintings. He described each one with surprising detail, recounting what he'd read from art books. His voice trembled, but his eyes gleamed as Naomi listened intently. Before an oil painting of a night sky filled with golden stars, Ethan whispered, "I always wanted to paint the sky I see through my telescope, but I never had anyone to share it with. Until now." Naomi met his gaze. "You have me now, Ethan, and I want to see your sky." His eyes lit up, as though her words were a promise of something immense. That evening, before Naomi returned to her room, Ethan handed her a small folded paper. The handwriting wavered, but his intent was firm. "If I'm afraid of the dark again, may I knock on your door?" Naomi's chest softened. "You don't need to ask. That door will always be open for you." Ethan lowered his head, but a smile, his first truly unguarded smile since she'd arrived, flickered across his lips. That night, Naomi returned to her bed, but sleep came easily. She knew Ethan might appear again at her door, and she would stay with him. Instead of worry, she felt peace. Across the mansion, Ethan sat by his window, notebook in hand. He wrote words he never thought he'd dare put down. "I'm no longer afraid of the night, because in the dark, I heard a whisper. I won't leave." And to him, that whisper had become the small, steady light guiding all the days to come. The third morning at the Whitmore estate began with a small surprise. Naomi found a clumsy bouquet on the threshold when she opened her door. Purple, yellow, and white wildflowers tangled together, many petals bruised by unsteady hands. Tucked inside was a folded note. Naomi bent down and opened it. The familiar handwriting appeared shaky but careful. "I didn't know which to choose. I thought each had its own beauty, just like the way you look at me. E." She stood still, heart tightening. Breathing deeply, she caught the raw, earthy scent of wildflowers. In that awkward bundle lay an astonishing effort. Ethan had gone into the garden, bent down to pick each stem, and gathered them to leave at her door. When Naomi entered the dining room, Ethan was seated, hands clasped beneath the table. The moment he saw her, he glanced up, eyes shimmering with nervous expectation. "You're the one who left the flowers at my door, weren't you?" Naomi asked gently. Ethan flushed, head bowed. I just thought maybe you'd like them. But if you don't," Naomi cut him off with a warm smile. "I do, truly. No one's ever picked flowers for me with their own hands before." He blinked, lifting his head in disbelief. "Really? Really? And I think it's the most beautiful gift I've ever received." His face softened, a faint smile tugging at his lips. His green eyes glowed so joyfully that Naomi felt her chest ache. After breakfast, Ethan surprised her again. "Naomi, would you come with me somewhere? I want to show you." Naomi nodded. "Lead the way." He guided her through the back garden, along a mossy path leading to a low hill where an old oak spread its branches wide. Beneath it stood a worn wooden bench, smoothed by years. "I come here often," Ethan murmured. "When I can't breathe, I sit here. From here, you can see the road leading out of the grounds. I've never walked it all the way, but I Imagine. Naomi sat beside him, keeping a safe distance. What do you imagine? His gaze drifted outward. I imagine, at the end of the road, there's a little town. People at the market, children playing. I think, if someone walked with me, maybe I could leave without fear. Naomi turned to him, her voice warm. Perhaps one day, I'll be that someone. He froze, caught by the weight of her words. You really would? Naomi nodded firmly. I would. As long as you're ready. A breeze stirred, carrying the damp scent of fallen leaves. Ethan sat unmoving, then whispered, Thank you for not laughing at me. I'll never laugh at your dreams, Naomi answered. On their way back, Ethan bent quickly, picking up a red leaf from the path. Awkwardly, he handed it to her. I don't have anything else, but maybe you'd like to keep this. Naomi accepted it, her eyes shining. You gave me flowers this morning, and a leaf this afternoon. I'm starting to think I'm the luckiest woman in the world. Ethan chuckled softly, his face lit like sunlight. At that moment, Naomi realized these awkward gifts were more than flowers or leaves. They were pieces of a heart daring to open, one small step at a time placing itself in her hands. That afternoon, the sky was bright blue, clouds drifting like soft cotton. Naomi sat in the library, sorting papers in her nurse's bag, when she heard faint footsteps. Ethan appeared, clutching a small parcel wrapped in brown paper, tied with a string. Naomi looked up and smiled. Do you have something for me? He nodded, cheeks flushed, and placed it on the table, pushing it toward her. I made this for you. But, if you don't like it, that's okay. Naomi unwrapped it. Inside lay a handmade notebook bound in pale blue fabric. On the cover, sketched faintly in pencil, were scattered stars. She stilled, running her hand gently across it. You made this yourself? Ethan nodded, eyes averted. I thought you might write in it, like how I write in mine. But yours could be nicer. Naomi bit her lip, holding back tears. Ethan, this is wonderful. I'll use it. And every time I write, I'll remember someone trusted me enough to give it. He glanced up, astonished, joy flickering across his face. He whispered, Really? Really? In fact, I'll write the first page right now. Naomi opened the notebook, uncapped her pen, and wrote in neat, flowing letters. Today, I received the first gift from a very special friend. She turned it so he could see. Ethan read, chest rising and falling. His lips moved as if to speak, but instead he smiled a genuine smile, free of strain. By late afternoon, Naomi suggested another walk in the garden. This time, Ethan agreed without hesitation. They strolled among the rosebeds still jeweled with dew. Do you often give gifts to others? Naomi asked to keep the conversation flowing. He shook his head. Never. I didn't know how, but with you, I think I want you to remember me. Even if you leave. Naomi stopped. You think I'll leave? His head lowered. Everyone does. My parents. They love me, but they're always busy. Tutors came and went. Even Sam, I used to think. One day he might vanish too. Naomi turned fully toward him. Ethan, I won't disappear without telling you. I'm here truly not for money or duty. I'm here because I want to be. His eyes grew wet, his hand trembling as if to reach out. But instead of retreating, he whispered, Naomi, if one day you must go, will you? Tell me first, so I can prepare. I can't bear another sudden disappearance. Naomi rested her hand lightly on his arm. I promise. Ethan froze, shoulders quivering. But this time, he didn't shrink back. He closed his eyes, letting her warm hand rest on him. That night, when Naomi returned to her room, she found another note slipped under her door. Thank you for accepting my gifts. Thank you for your promise. E. Naomi smiled softly, folding it and tucking it into the notebook he had made for her. She knew, from this day forward, the gifts would not just be flowers or leaves. They would be the small steps, the honest fragments of Ethan's heart he dared to offer, and she would cherish every one. The next morning, as Naomi stepped into the main hallway, she heard a familiar sound from the music room. the piano. But this time, the melody was different. No longer the heavy, somber tones she had first heard, but a light, bright piece, like birds singing in the garden after rain. Naomi paused before the half-closed door. Peeking inside, she saw Ethan sitting upright at the piano, fingers moving more fluidly than she had imagined. His eyes were half shut, his lips pressed gently together, his whole being absorbed in the music. She didn't want to interrupt, so she stayed still, listening. The melody carried more than notes. A message without words. A heart laid bare across the keys. When the piece ended, Naomi clapped softly. Ethan started, whipping his head around, his face flushed. I didn't know you were listening. I was lucky to, Naomi said as she stepped inside. That was the most beautiful piece I've ever heard. Did you compose it? Ethan nodded, twisting his fingers together. I wrote it last night. When I remembered you said, you wouldn't disappear. Naomi froze. You wrote music? Because of me? He nodded again, gaze dropping. I'm not good at words, but when I play, I feel like I can say everything. Naomi sat on the bench beside the piano. Could you teach me a part of it? I've never played before, but I'd like to try. Ethan looked startled. You want to learn from me? Why not? You'd be the best teacher I can think of. He swallowed, then slowly guided her hand to the keys. His hand trembled as it touched hers, but he didn't pull away this time. Warmth spread between them, and Naomi felt the struggle inside him, the clash between fear and the longing to connect. Press here, then here, he whispered hoarsely. Naomi followed, producing a few simple notes. She laughed. Terrible, isn't it? Ethan shook his head, eyes shining. No, beautiful, because it's your hand playing. Naomi looked at him, struck silent. In those green eyes, she saw complete sincerity, unguarded and burning with a desperate desire to love. Sam entered quietly, only to stop at the sight. Ethan's hand rested atop Naomi's, guiding her along the keys. His shoulders were no longer rigid with fear. Sam slipped back out, smiling faintly. Perhaps his young master had found his own language. When the short lesson ended, Naomi rose. Thank you, my teacher. I'll practice, so I won't let you down. Ethan clutched his notebook tightly. You haven't let me down. You made me believe. My music can reach someone. Naomi left the music room, but the melody lingered in her heart. An unfinished piece, yet already a confession. Ethan had begun to speak through music, and every note bore her name. While Naomi was reading in her room that evening, there came a faint knock. She opened the door to find Ethan in the hallway, clutching his notebook, eyes caught between shyness and resolve. What is it, Ethan? She asked softly. He handed her the notebook. On the page, in careful script, he had written, I want to play you another piece, but only if you agree to sit beside me until the end. Naomi smiled, closing the notebook. I agree. Lead the way. They entered the music room together. The crystal chandelier bathed the wooden floor in warm light, its shadows stretching long. Ethan sat at the piano, gesturing for Naomi to sit beside him. He drew a deep breath and began. This time, the melody was neither quick nor mournful, but gentle, steady like a heartbeat. The notes rose and fell slowly, telling a story without words. Fear, loneliness, and light breaking through, carrying hope. Naomi watched silently, eyes fixed on Ethan's hands. Fingers that once trembled now struck the keys with certainty. With each sound, he seemed to pour out pieces of his soul. As the music swelled, Ethan suddenly lifted his gaze and met hers. His eyes trembled, but he didn't look away. It was as though every word he'd never spoken was pressed into that look. Naomi's heart clenched. She whispered, You're speaking to me through music, right? Ethan gave a slight nod, still playing. When the piece ended, the last note hung in the air before fading into silence. Ethan lowered his head, shoulders shaking. Naomi placed her hand gently on his shoulder. Ethan, that piece was beautiful. It felt like your heart was confessing to the world, and I'm lucky to be the first to hear it. He turned, lips trembling. Naomi, I never dared trust anyone, but when I play, I think of you. I think, if anyone could understand, it's you. Naomi smiled, her gaze tender. I do understand, and I'll always be here to listen whenever you want to speak through music. That night, Naomi returned to her room with an unfamiliar ache in her chest. She opened the notebook Ethan had given her and wrote on the next page, "Today, I heard Ethan's music, and I knew it wasn't just melody. It was words he cannot yet speak, words I will treasure forever." Outside, the moon shone bright over the quiet gardens. The once gloomy mansion now echoed music full of hope, born from a boy daring to speak through trembling keys. The following night, the Connecticut sky was clear. Thousands of stars stretched across the darkness, glittering like silver dust scattered over velvet. Naomi stood on the second-floor balcony of the mansion, gazing upward. She had never seen the heavens look so beautiful. The door behind her creaked open. Ethan appeared, clutching his familiar notebook. He hesitated, as if to retreat, but then gathered his courage and stepped out. "Couldn't sleep either?" Naomi asked, smiling at him. Ethan gave a slight nod. I saw the sky tonight. It's too beautiful to miss." Naomi patted the space beside her. "Come here. Let's look together." He moved closer, keeping a careful distance, but no longer trembled. His green eyes gleamed, reflecting starlight. "Can you show me the constellations?" Naomi asked. Ethan lifted his gaze, his voice unexpectedly steady. "That's Orion the hunter. Over there is Cassiopeia, shaped like a W. And there, that's the Milky Way. It's like a glowing road across the sky." Naomi smiled, listening as he spoke with passion. In that moment, he wasn't the frightened young man she had met, but a guide leading her through the vast universe. "You know," she whispered, "when you talk about the stars, your eyes shine brighter than they do." Ethan froze, cheeks flaming red. He lowered his head, mumbling, "No one's ever said that to me." Naomi placed her hand slowly on the railing, close to his. Maybe because no one stayed to listen before. Their hands rested inches apart. Ethan looked down, hesitated, then inched his fingers toward hers. His trembling touch brushed her fingertips. He sucked in a sharp breath, but didn't pull away. "You just touched my hand," Naomi said softly, as though to steady him. Ethan nodded, his voice shaking. I'm afraid, but I wanted to try, because I don't want to lose this moment." Naomi turned her hand and gently held his. "Then let's keep it. Under this sky full of stars, you're not alone." His eyes shimmered. "Naomi, if one day you have to leave, will you remember this?" Naomi looked straight at him, her voice firm. "I won't forget, and I promise, until you're ready, I'll stay by your side." He bit his lip, then nodded. Starlight glimmered in his eyes, sealing their unspoken vow. That night, back in her room, Naomi wrote in the notebook, "Beneath the stars, we held hands for the first time, not from fear, not from force, but by choice. And I know that one day, Ethan will truly believe he deserves love." The next morning, Sam noticed something different. The young master no longer skulked along the walls or avoided every gaze. He walked slowly but more firmly, his eyes glowing as though they still carried the stars from the night before. Naomi saw it too at breakfast. Ethan was already waiting when she arrived. A plate of toast before him, toast. He seemed to have prepared himself. "You made this?" Naomi asked in surprise. Ethan nodded, awkward. I wanted to try. It's not as good as Sam's, but I wanted you to have something I made." Naomi bit into the toast, smiling. "Better than anything I've ever had, because it was made with sincerity." Ethan's cheeks flushed crimson, but his eyes shone with pure joy. That afternoon, Naomi suggested a walk in the garden. Ethan hesitated. He hadn't left the mansion walls in years. But when Naomi offered her hand, he slowly took it. With his first step across the threshold, he drew in a breath of fresh air, as though breaking invisible chains. They walked along the gravel path, lavender blooming purple on both sides. A soft breeze carried its fragrance. Ethan listened to birdsong. The rustle of leaves sounds ordinary to Naomi but new to him. He glanced around constantly, like a child discovering the world for the first time. "Everything is so beautiful," he whispered. Naomi squeezed his hand. Because now you're allowing yourself to see. Before, you only dared from behind a window. Ethan nodded, eyes distant. I used to think outside was only fear. But today, I feel free. They rested beneath the great oak at the garden's edge at sunset. The sky glowed with violet and orange. Ethan sat in silence for a long time, then opened his notebook and wrote with trembling hand, I want to make a promise. I'll be brave enough to step into the wider world someday. And when I do, I want the one walking beside me to be you. Naomi read it, her heart tightening. She took her pen and wrote beneath his words, Then I promise too, I'll be here, waiting for that day, and I'll hold your hand wherever we go, whether out there or to the very edge of the stars. Ethan read, clutching the notebook like treasure. Then he looked up at her for a long time. A promise. Beneath the stars, he murmured, as if naming a new melody. Naomi nodded gently. And it will be the song we write together. As moonlight poured across the garden that night, Naomi knew she and Ethan had laid the first stone of a future uncertain, full of obstacles, but built on a promise more precious than any wealth within the mansion walls. News of Naomi's presence at the Hartford mansion began to leak out. No one knew exactly where it came from, perhaps a staff member who'd come and gone, maybe the gossiping circles of the wealthy who loved to whisper about one another. But within days, headlines began appearing on social media. Hartford heir's secret girlfriend. Working-class nurse infiltrates $1 million estate, true love, or a scheme. Naomi read those lines while shopping in town with Sam. Her hand tightened on the canvas bag. Her heart pounded. She had known this day might come, but she hadn't expected it so quickly. Meanwhile, Ethan happened upon a printed article left on the coffee table in the parlor. The photograph showed Naomi snapped by a hidden lens as she left the hospital the day before. The caption pushed the angle. A working-class nurse. Is she after the Hartford fortune? Ethan trembled, lips moving. They're lying. Naomi isn't like that. Naomi came in and found him frozen, eyes rimmed red. She grabbed the paper from his hands. Ethan, don't read that. They only want clicks. They don't care about the truth. But they'll believe it, Ethan whispered. They'll think you're only with me for money, and then you'll leave me. Naomi sat beside him and took his hands tightly. Listen to me. I'm here for you, for who you are. Nothing else. I won't leave you, no matter what they write. Ethan looked at her, eyes full of tears. Do you promise? Naomi nodded firmly. I promise. But the storm did not stop. The next morning, a cluster of reporters tried to force their way through the estate gates. The guards fought to hold them back. Eleanor, Ethan's mother, summoned Naomi to her private room. Do you see? This is the consequence, Eleanor said, voice cold. Our family has never been scrutinized like this. You must understand, Hartford's reputation matters above all. Naomi kept calm. Madam, I didn't seek this attention. I only want to help Ethan live more normally, to step out of the shadows. Eleanor narrowed her eyes. Or do you want to step into this glittering spotlight? Don't think I know where you come from. A girl with no name, no family, why are you here if not for gain? Naomi stiffened, but kept her voice even. I'm here for Ethan. I've never cared about money. If you think otherwise, ask your son whether he believes in this. The door swung open. Ethan entered, face flushed but eyes determined. Mother, he said, voice shaking, Naomi isn't using me. She's why I dared to walk in the garden, to play music before anyone. If you don't believe her, at least believe me. A heavy silence fell. Eleanor looked at her son, the boy she'd thought would be locked away forever, who now dared to defend the person he loved. Surprise flickered across her face. Naomi squeezed Ethan's hand quietly. In that instant, they both knew the storm had come. But the first brave light in Ethan's heart began to spark from that storm. The next day, the press frenzy intensified. Grainy photos taken from afar, Naomi leaving the market, Ethan peering from a window, were paired with sensational lines. Innocent love or a perfect plan. Hartford heir goes public, but with whom? Ethan sat in the library, eyes glued to his phone. His hand shook so much that he nearly dropped it. Naomi, they say I don't understand the world so that you can fool me. His voice hitched. Am I really that naive? Naomi felt the sting, the deepest wound in him, the fear that he was too weak to be trusted. She sat down and wrapped her arms around his trembling hands. Ethan, listen to me, she said firmly. You're not naive. You just haven't had the chance to live like others. That doesn't make you less. You have intelligence, talent, and a heart many would envy. And I love that person. Ethan looked up, eyes bright with fire. You love me for real? Naomi did not hesitate. Yes, I love you. Not for money, not for status, because you are Ethan, the one who writes music to say what he can't speak, who held my hand beneath the stars despite his fear. Sam entered holding a stack of newspapers. He looked at Ethan, then at Naomi, and nodded slightly. Master, Miss Naomi, we can't hide forever. The press will hound this until there's an official answer. If you stay silent, they'll invent one. If you speak, at least the story will belong to you. Ethan went pale. You mean a press conference? Sam nodded. Or a small, controlled meeting. You'll have to face them, but not alone. Miss Naomi can stand beside you. Naomi turned to Ethan. You don't have to do it right away, but sometimes you must speak up if you want to protect this love. I'll stand with you, whatever happens. Ethan inhaled, fear clear on his face. Then, remembering their promise under the stars, he whispered, I'll try, as long as Naomi is there. That evening, Eleanor came to Naomi's room. Her tone had softened. She sat quietly. You truly care for him that much? Naomi nodded. More than myself. Eleanor exhaled. I used to think only money and honor could protect my son, but today I see that perhaps only love can. If you truly love him, help him stand firm. The storm will get fiercer. Naomi answered without hesitation. I promised Ethan, and I never break a promise. Late that night, Ethan went to the balcony where they had watched the stars. He brought with him an old violin, a gift from his father in childhood that he'd never dared play before anyone. He scraped a few tentative notes, voice quivering. Naomi, tomorrow. I will let them see me. But first, I want you to hear me. So if I falter out there, I will remember that once I played for you. Naomi's eyes brimmed. Then play. I'm here, listening to every note. The music rose, sometimes hesitant, sometimes trembling but full of courage. Naomi heard fear in those songs, but above all, she heard light, a young man learning to stand upright amid the storm. When the final note faded into the night, Ethan exhaled and set the violin down. He looked at Naomi and whispered, Tomorrow, I will not hide. I will tell the world that I love you. Naomi hugged him tightly. And I will be right by your side so they will see the truth. The storm still raged, but they saw the first rays of a dawning light in each other's arms. The press conference was set in the grand hall of the Hartford mansion, a vast room with high ceilings and glittering chandeliers, once echoing only with lonely footsteps. Today, it was packed with reporters, photographers, and cameras. Outside the gates, townsfolk gathered, eager to see. Ethan sat in the waiting room, clutching his worn notebook. Sweat dotted his forehead. His breath came shallow. Naomi, I can't. There are too many. I'll collapse. Naomi sat beside him, laying her warm hand over his. Ethan, remember? You once played for me, though you were afraid. You once held my hand under the stars. Each time you stepped past fear, you weren't alone. I was there, and today is no different. Sam entered, glancing at them both. It's time. But remember, you don't need to be anyone else. Just be yourself. When the doors opened, camera flashes burst like lightning. Ethan blinked rapidly, but Naomi held his hand tight, guiding him step by step to the podium. Whispers rippled through the crowd. A reporter shouted, Ethan Hartford, is it true you're dating Naomi, a common nurse? Is this a stunt to gain sympathy? Ethan trembled, but instead of retreating, he raised the microphone. His voice wavered at first, then grew clearer. Yes, Naomi is the one I love, not because of where she comes from or what she is, but because she saw me when I couldn't see myself. The room went silent. Another voice broke in. Do you know people say she's only using you to get close to the Hartford fortune? Naomi opened her mouth, but Ethan squeezed her hand and continued. If anyone has ever used anyone, then it's me. I used her kindness to learn how to face the world. Naomi gave me courage. Our love isn't about money. It's about me finally learning to trust another human being. This time, applause erupted from the back, not from the press, but from townsfolk watching the live stream. Some reporters, once skeptical, couldn't hide the emotion in their eyes. After the tense Q&A, Naomi was allowed to speak. She lifted her head, her voice firm. I didn't come here seeking fame or fortune. I came to care for someone who deserves love. And today, I stand beside him not as a nurse, but as his future partner. Ethan turned to her, eyes brimming. Again, the hall broke into noise, not sharp suspicion this time, but mingled with admiration. Sam stood quietly in the back, lips curved faintly. He knew the young master had crossed the most significant threshold of his life. Ethan nearly collapsed from exhaustion when the conference ended, but Naomi caught him. Outside, the crowd still cheered. For the first time, Ethan was no longer the recluse heir, but a man who dared step into the light with the one he loved. Naomi leaned close and whispered, "You did it, Ethan. You showed the world your light." He smiled weakly, whispering back, "No, Naomi. Only because you held my hand." The light appeared. Afterward, the storm of speculation eased. New headlines painted a different tone. Ethan Hartford from shadows to light through love. Naomi, the woman who helped the Hartford heir find himself. Skeptics remained, but the tide of empathy and support grew stronger. Letters poured into the mansion from people sharing their struggles with anxiety, stories of love helping them endure. Ethan read each one, trembling yet smiling. "Naomi, maybe. I'm not alone. There are many out there like me." Naomi nodded softly. "And you've given them hope. You've shown that weakness isn't shameful, it can become strength when shared." One afternoon, Sam took Ethan and Naomi into town for the first time since the event. At first, Ethan clung to Naomi's hand, eyes down, dreading strangers' stares. But instead of scorn, people smiled. Some clapped. An older woman took his hand and said, "You're brave. Don't let anyone tell you you're unworthy." Ethan couldn't speak, only nodded. As they walked on, Naomi felt his grip tighten firm now, not trembling. Ethan sat at the piano with Naomi beside him in the music room that night. He drew a deep breath and began a new melody. It was no longer fear, no longer loneliness. The music was alive, radiant, like sunrise after the storm. When the piece ended, he turned to her, eyes shining. "Naomi, I wrote this for us. I want to call it A New Beginning." Naomi laid her hand on his chest. "Yes, this is only the beginning." Weeks later, they left the mansion to move into a smaller, warmer home near town. Ethan said, "I want a place that isn't a gilded cage, but a nest, a place where we can build a real life." Naomi smiled and agreed. They planted lavender outside and set the piano by the window where morning light could fall. Sam moved nearby, a quiet father figure still watching over the young master. One night beneath a star-filled sky, Ethan led Naomi into the yard. Hands trembling, he pulled a small box from his pocket. "Naomi," he said, voice unsteady but eyes resolute. "I once feared touching your hand, feared meeting your eyes. But now, I only want to hold your hand forever. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed as Naomi nodded. "Yes, because from the first time you played for me, I knew I wanted to stay." He slipped a simple ring on her finger. Overhead, a shooting star streaked past. Ethan whispered, "That's the witness to our promise." From that day, their journey was no longer about an heir and a nurse. It was about two people who dared defy prejudice and love with all their hearts. Ethan was no longer the timid master. He became a man who knew how to love, live, and open his arms to the world. Naomi was no longer the hired caregiver, but a partner who helped him compose the song Freedom. On returning to the old mansion, Ethan paused before the library door where they had first met. He turned to Naomi, holding her hand tight. "From here," it began, "but from now on, every door I walk through, I want to walk with you." Naomi smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. and I will walk with you to the very edge of the stars." And so, through storms and light, they found a new beginning, a love that redeemed a man and opened a world where courage and tenderness walk side by side.